Air travel is already stressful, so why make it worse for yourself? If you don't want to get in a fight, get covered in germs, or lose your hair in a terrible accident, then you'd better avoid wearing these things on your next flight. Traveling by plane can involve a good deal of rushing around, so at some point, you'll probably need a little refreshment. Thus, there's a pretty solid chance that you could end up with an outfit emergency while you're in transit, especially if you're unlucky enough to spill your drink on your lap in the middle of a long flight. If worst comes to worst, you might end up digging through your carry-on luggage, crossing your fingers, and hoping you have a spare shirt. But in case you don't, or if you don't want to change in an airplane bathroom, you should plan ahead. If you're wearing white or light colors, any stains will have plenty of time to soak in clothing before you get a chance to do a load of laundry. So save yourself the sorrow by opting for dark or patterned clothing that can more effectively hide potential spills. There are plenty of reasons you might want to look sharp when you travel, but clothes that look great and feel fabulous when you're casually strolling around town can become a source of misery when you're sitting in a crowded airplane for hours on end. For one thing, tight clothes can affect circulation when you fly. In extreme cases, they can even increase the chance of a blood clot or deep vein thrombosis. You should generally allow yourself to be casual during a flight and opt for something like an oversized hoodie and cargo pants. Other smart options include leggings or a comfy lounge set. One of the biggest mistakes you can make when traveling by air is to spray yourself with your usual body fragrance. It might not seem all that strong to your own nose, but if you're sitting next to someone who's prone to migraines or has other sensory issues, then it could ruin their flight. And with all of the running around you do when you're traveling, even the lightest fragrances can heat up on your skin and become overwhelming to those around you. Considering the close quarters of an airplane cabin, it's best to avoid scented lotions, sprays, and perfumes until you've landed. It's just common courtesy. Your favorite fragrance might be your seatmate's worst nightmare.
I love the smell of napalm in the morning.
Jumpsuits and rompers are easy looks that can save you the trouble of figuring out how to pair up outfits. They also tend to be comfortable since they generally don't feature rigid and restrictive waistbands that can press uncomfortably into your flesh when you're on a long flight. But all that comfort and convenience can become a problem when nature calls, and you find yourself peeling off a romper to use the facilities in a cramped space. It's better to minimize the chance that you or your outfit will collide with something unsanitary at 30,000 feet by opting for more bathroom-friendly attire. After all, when flying, it's better to be safe than stylish. If you have long hair, hair claws can be incredibly convenient, not to mention cute. With a simple flip of the hand, your tresses can be neatly secured off the shoulders, and it helps that claws are much gentler on locks than a typical hair tie. Alas, it's impossible to lean your head against an airplane headrest with a claw clip on the back of your head. If you want to make sure things don't get too hairy, make sure to opt for a safer styling choice. Something like a French braid should be fine, or there's always the good old-fashioned top knot. Travel can be undeniably rough on the skin. Throw in a lot of makeup in the mix, and you might be more than a little bit troubled by what you see in the mirror once you get off the plane. Thus, wearing heavy makeup on long flights isn't exactly the best idea. The trouble is that low cabin humidity can cause skin dehydration during those flights. When mixed with the stress and general disruption of flying, makeup can also increase your risk of a breakout. But that doesn't mean that you have to go completely barefaced. If you absolutely can't stand the thought of flying without your face on, then try gentle tinted moisturizers and mineral makeup. It's easy enough to underestimate the sun's potential for damage when you're spending a day at the beach. But did you know that flying without sunscreen can also lead to sunburn or skin damage? As it turns out, UV exposure at cruising height has been linked to increased risk for melanoma and skin damage in pilots and flight crew. While the material used in airplane windows can reduce the transmission of UVB rays, UVA transmission can still occur at this height. All you have to do is scroll through social media to see anecdotal evidence of how window seat sunburn is a real thing. So before your boarding number is called, play it safe and apply sunscreen, as well as some lip protection that contains SPF. Every once in a while, an airline passenger goes viral for testing the limits of free speech. During a busy flight full of families, sweet old grandparents, and generally exhausted people, the last thing any airline employee wants to do is argue with someone who insists on wearing a shirt that contains profanity or something else controversial. Most airlines give pilots the authority to decide what passengers are allowed to wear. They generally won't allow anything that could create a conflict or safety hazard, such as a full-on fistfight. Even without considering the captain's rules, it's probably best to just keep the peace when you're cramming into a flying tin can with a bunch of strangers. It's kind of surreal how air travel can mean waking up in one corner of the world after falling asleep on the opposite side of the globe. Even if you only take a domestic flight, traveling miles and miles from home can bring with it a pretty dramatic weather shift, like exchanging sweltering heat in the deep south for sub-freezing temps in New England. You can certainly change your clothes after your plane lands, but in the space between your starting point and destination, there's a good chance you'll have at least one layover and a long shuttle ride. So be sure to check the forecast for your destination and plan accordingly. Considering all the potentially unpredictable weather changes involved with flying, one of the wisest things you can do when getting ready is to layer up. And it's not just your destination that you should plan for. Between switching planes, traveling from one building to another, and hitching a ride on a tram or trains, you can encounter a pretty wide range of temperature and humidity. We recommend layering loose-fitting, breathable fabrics that you can easily add or remove as needed without having to duck into a restroom. Comfortable lounge sets, leggings, roomy cardigans, and pashmina scarves are all safe bets. If you're traveling during the summer, a pair of roomy shorts or a playful, sporty skirt might sound like a comfy bet at the airport. But there are a few reasons why you might want to reconsider. If the air conditioning is on full blast on your plane, then you could very well end up shivering for the next few hours. And then there's the cringe-inducing possibility that the sweaty passenger next to you might also be wearing shorts. And with today's ever-shrinking plane seat sizes, this means there's an unsettlingly high chance that you'll have to endure sweat-on-sweat contact with a stranger. Furthermore, planes are pretty dirty themselves, so your legs could come into contact with a lot of dirt and germs.
Barf!
In 2019, an airline passenger named Emily O'Connor went viral after she refused to cover up a bra top and then got booted from her flight. It's conceivable that another airline might be okay with this outfit selection, but we still wouldn't recommend it. In general, it's not the best idea to rock an open-backed halter top or crop top, or any shirt or dress that's cut in a way that exposes skin. The moment you sit down, all of that bare flesh will be touching the seat. And when you think about how likely it is that another passenger was dripping sweat through their shirt just minutes earlier, it should be enough to make you reconsider. Women's undergarments have come a long way since the bullet bra and the wonder bra. Alas, many modern bras can still bring the pain, particularly when there's an underwire on deck. Plus, when you factor in long hours of wear and the subpar posture that you'll have to deal with when sandwiched into a tight airline seat, it's a clear recipe for misery. So save your power bra for a special occasion. Instead, opt for one that's both supportive and comfortable, like a sports bra or a reliable bralette. If you're prone to sweating when traveling, you may also want to opt for a moisture-wicking option. There are plenty of reasons not to wear sequins when flying. For one thing, you're not a backup dancer in a Britney Spears video. And then there's the fact that the material could trigger a security alert. But the biggest reason that you should save your sequins for the dance floor is that they can create a distracting light show on the plane. Anyone who has driven with sequins on board in full sunlight has probably experienced this effect. As the sun reflects on your attire, each little sequin is suddenly transformed into a miniature fireworks display. Even if you love the idea of bringing Lady Gaga energy onto your flight, your fellow passengers probably won't appreciate being blinded.
Fashion!
One of the most divisive issues facing air travelers today is whether or not it's socially acceptable to rock pajamas when you're traveling by plane. A lot of people have some pretty strong feelings on the subject, and there seems to be no in-between on the issue. Even Oscar-winning actress Monique has weighed in, as she once lamented on Instagram, "I saw so many of our young sisters in head bonnets, scarves, slippers, pajamas, blankets wrapped around them, and this is how they're showing up to the airport. When did we lose pride?" Many etiquette experts agree, suggesting that, for the most part, the only people who should wear pajamas when they fly are small children. But if you're fine with the little side-eye, then you can get away with some comfy pants at the airport. After all, you probably won't be the only one dressed like that. In the unlikely event that you need to exit your plane through the emergency evacuation slide, there's a very real chance that high heels could damage the slide, and nobody wants to have that guilt hanging over their head. Now, you shouldn't plan your travel outfit entirely around the remote possibility that a disaster will befall you, but a worst-case scenario isn't the only emergency that could have you wishing for more practical footwear. After all, if your connecting flight is late, then running from gate to gate in a pair of stilettos is hardly ideal. And no matter how skilled you are at strutting in some Louboutins, you also don't want to have to worry about the spill that could happen when bumping into a clumsy fellow passenger. Much like high heels, flip-flops and sandals don't tend to fare too well when you have to sprint across the airport. With all your little digits exposed, you could also end up with a painfully stubbed toe. And that's not the only reason to save open-toed footwear for the beach. As it turns out, you could also find yourself getting roasted about it on social media.
If you wear open-toed sandals in the airport, don't talk to me.
There's already enough to deal with during air travel to not have to also worry about going viral for all the wrong reasons. And sure, you could slip on a pair of socks, but at that point, you might as well just opt for sneakers and call it a day.